What avoidants secretly do at night when they miss you. During the day, avoidants often appear calm, distant, and completely unaffected by the relationship ending. They distract themselves with work, routines, social media, hobbies, or anything that keeps their emotions buried beneath the surface. To the outside world, they can look emotionally detached and perfectly in control of themselves. And sometimes, that cold appearance makes people believe the avoidant never cared at all. But nighttime is completely different for an avoidant attachment personality. Because when the world becomes quiet and distractions slowly disappear, the emotions they spent all day suppressing finally begin creeping back into their mind. That is when the memories start returning unexpectedly. Not always loudly or dramatically, but in quiet emotional waves that hit them when nobody is around. A song suddenly reminds them of your voice and your presence. An old message appears while scrolling through their phone late at night. A random memory from months ago suddenly feels painfully vivid again. And even though avoidants try hard to disconnect from emotional intensity, their feelings do not disappear as easily as people think. They simply process emotions differently and much more privately than others do. One of the first things avoidants secretly do at night when they miss you is revisit old memories they pretend no longer affect them. They may look through old conversations without replying to anything. They may stare at old photos longer than they want to admit. And sometimes they reread your messages while convincing themselves it means nothing. But deep down, those memories affect them far more than they show externally. Because avoidants often suppress emotional attachment instead of fully processing it. So when they are finally alone at night, those buried emotions slowly rise back to the surface. Another thing avoidants secretly do is imagine reaching out to you without actually doing it. They type messages and delete them before sending anything. They think about checking your social media while pretending they do not care. They replay conversations in their head and wonder if things could have gone differently. But their fear of emotional vulnerability usually stops them from taking action. Because avoidants deeply struggle with emotional exposure and losing control of their feelings. Even when they miss someone intensely, part of them still fears closeness at the exact same time. And this internal conflict becomes strongest during lonely nights. One side of them misses connection, comfort, and emotional intimacy with you. But another side of them fears dependence, emotional pressure, and vulnerability. That is why avoidants often send mixed signals after distance or breakup. Because internally, they are fighting emotions they do not fully understand themselves. Late at night, avoidants also tend to emotionally replay the relationship in silence, not always focusing on the good memories alone, but also replaying moments where they felt emotionally overwhelmed or pressured. They try to convince themselves that distance was necessary. They remind themselves why they pulled away emotionally. But despite all that mental justification, there are still moments where loneliness quietly breaks through their emotional walls. And during those moments, they miss the small things the most. The feeling of emotional comfort around you. The familiarity of your presence during stressful days. The small conversations they once took for granted. The emotional safety they secretly felt, but rarely admitted out loud. Avoidants often struggle to verbally express emotional dependence, so they may not openly say, "I miss you deeply," but their behaviors at night often reveal emotions they hide during the day. Some avoidants distract themselves endlessly at night to escape these emotions completely. They binge watch shows until early morning hours. They scroll social media for hours without paying attention to anything. They stay busy online because silence forces them to feel emotions they normally avoid. And sometimes, they even check your profile secretly while pretending they have moved on. Not because they always want reconciliation immediately, but because emotionally disconnecting from someone they cared about is harder than they admit. The hardest part about understanding avoidance is this: their silence does not always mean absence of feeling. Sometimes their silence is actually emotional overload hidden behind distance. Because avoidants are often taught internally that emotions create vulnerability and loss of control. So instead of expressing feelings openly, They suppress them until those emotions leak out privately during moments of isolation. At night, when nobody is watching them perform emotional independence anymore, they often feel the weight of the connection far more deeply than people realize. But instead of reaching out emotionally in healthy ways, many avoidants continue fighting their feelings internally and alone. And this is what confuses so many people who loved an avoidant deeply. The avoidant may genuinely miss you at night while still struggling to emotionally move toward you at the same time. Because missing someone and feeling emotionally safe enough to reconnect are two completely different battles inside an avoidant's mind. And until they learn how to face vulnerability without fear, they may continue loving people silently while hiding behind distance in the dark.